Good afternoon. America is warning the hardest hits are still to come as the war in the Middle East intensifies. As fighter jets bombed Tehran, Iran hit back, targeting the US embassy in Saudi Arabia. Right now, Iran is threatening to set fire to any ships in the crucial Strait of Hormuz, sending oil prices higher. Chief reporter Chris Reason is in Tel Aviv with the latest.
Well, that's right. Good afternoon. It is another extraordinary development from here with the US State Department declaring that all US citizens needed to leave the entire Middle East region now. The only problem being, of course, that there are very few ways to do that. The list of countries they're saying needs to be cleared includes Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Syria, UAE. The list goes on. Now, the bombings continued across Lebanon and Iran. In Lebanon now, the death toll there up to 52. Iran, US forces saying they've sunk the majority of the Iranian Navy, 9 ships sunk. Now this morning, Lebanon is blanketed with thick smoke. We can see the plumes of dark clouds above that country from the south all the way up to the capital, Beirut. Iran is now warning that they will set fire, quote, to any ships trying to pass through the Straits of Hormuz. That, of course, has massive implications as a critical oil and gas route there, implications for our petrol prices at the Bowser in Australia. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited a site where 9 people killed just outside of Jerusalem on the weekend while sitting in their bomb shelter, we might add. Now, he says it's going to be a quick and decisive war. Let's listen to some of what he had to say.
I said it could be quick and decisive. It may take some time, but it's not going to take years. It's not an endless war. In fact, it's an effort right now to achieve the peace that we all yearn and pray for. And I think together we'll achieve it.
Now, yesterday, 7 News got access to a key IDF headquarters here in Tel Aviv, Israel, to talk to senior leadership there. While we were mid-interview, sirens sounded, and all of us had to race off to military bunkers underneath that HQ. Now, before the interview was cut short, the senior commander pushed that message again, that it was better for Israel, the United States, to do something now than do nothing. There was a window of opportunity to roll this regime. He had a special mention for Australia. Let's listen.
We're fighting for freedom, for stability, and we're fighting an enemy that turns off the internet and massacres their own people and lies to the world about us. And it's an Israeli problem right now. It could be an Australian problem tomorrow.
Now, also overnight, worrying news at a military base in the UAE, 40 kilometres outside of Dubai, Al Manad, which is the base and that houses at least 100 Australian troops. I've been there. It's been a key part of our forward deployment for decades now. Well, that's been hit by an attack from Iran. Richard Marles assuring everyone there is safe.
They are all safe and accounted for. We have all the scenarios in mind and we are preparing as best we can for them.
We've got new details and images too on that extraordinary scene when we saw 3 F-15 Strike Eagle fighter jets over Kuwait, American jets being shot down by friendly fire, Kuwaiti Patriot missiles taking them down. All 6 crew managed to parachute to safety. Incredible moments as they landed on the ground and locals rushed towards them. One pilot was threatened until he revealed he was American. So US President Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu insisting this will not become a forever war and that it could be over in 4 to 5 weeks. But everybody here is saying that the effects will be felt long after that. Back to you.
And more from Chris Reason in the news at 6. The US president has issued a terrifying warning that a big wave of attacks on Iran is yet to come, while Tehran continues to fire missiles at American bases across the Middle East. Donald Trump is also not ruling out putting American forces on the ground. Rob Scott reports from Washington, D.C.
Well, today we saw Donald Trump make his first public comments on camera since authorising the strikes on Iran 3 days ago. Speaking at a medal ceremony at the White House, he described the offensive in Iran as America's last best chance to remove what he calls a sick and sinister regime. He says it should take about 4 or 5 weeks to achieve all of Operation Epic Fury's mission objectives, but the US military has the capacity and the capability to go longer if necessary.
We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay, whatever it takes. We have the strongest and most powerful, by far, military in the world, and we will easily prevail.
The president also now revealing he would have no issue with deploying US boots on the ground in Iran if necessary. The Secretary of State Marco Rubio warning the new leadership in that country that the next wave of American strikes will be the hardest.
The hardest hits are yet to come from the US military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. The world will be a safer place when we're done with this operation.
Pete Hegseth, the US Defense Secretary, has sought to downplay fears that this will be another so-called endless war. He says it won't be, and he says that this is not another Iraq.
Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change.
So an interesting comment there from Pete Hegseth saying that this is not another regime change war, which is obviously flying in the face of a lot of what Donald Trump has been saying over the past few days, that was one of the objectives of this whole operation, was to change the leadership group in that country.
Rob Scott in Washington. The UK has allowed United States permission to use British air bases during the conflict. But Prime Minister Keir Starmer has refused to commit British forces, saying his country has learned from the Iraq War. Here's Ben Downey in London.
Yes, he has. Keir Starmer telling British Parliament the reason why UK didn't follow the US and Israel in these offensive Iranian strikes is that he can't commit British troops to any military action unless he's certain there is a sound legal and well thought out plan behind it, effectively saying that America doesn't have such a plan. Now, before entering politics, Keir Starmer was an international law expert, and up until this war, he had resisted heavy American pressure to allow the US military to use British RAF bases for such a war effort. But as since this attack broke out, he's actually relinquished quite a bit, saying the US can now use these RAF bases, but only for limited defensive strikes against Iranian missile sites. Now, despite that, because of his initial reluctance, Donald Trump and the US Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, have accused him of clutching his pearls and saying that he was too passive, criticising him for that critical delay. But Keir Starmer was adamant, talking to the British Parliament, says his government does not believe in regime change from the skies.
I am not prepared to commit our military service people to action unless I am sure that what they're doing is lawful and has a viable basis.
Britain here is effectively desperate to avoid a repeat of what happened in Iraq, following the US on bad information that left the country with disastrous consequences, but it has sparked some political friendly fire across both sides of the Atlantic.
Some commercial flights have started taking off from Dubai and Abu Dhabi, where the majority of Australians are stranded due to the war. Let's go live this afternoon to Josh Martin in Parliament House in Canberra. Josh, do we know whether any Australians were on those flights that have taken off?
Good afternoon, Hugh. At this stage, we don't. At least 15 Etihad flights have departed. The situation, though, remains touch and go for those stranded Australians. The Foreign Minister says this is the biggest consular operation in Australia's history. Penny Wong says Iran's drone and missile attacks on the United Arab Emirates are making the situation particularly complicated. The airports in Abu Dhabi and Dubai are usually safe zones but have come under attack. There are currently 115,000 citizens in the Middle East, and normally 11,000 Australians would pass through the UAE for their travel every day. Minister Wong has called her counterpart in the UAE, who has confirmed his country is accommodating and feeding stranded Australians, but those on the ground say communication has been poor, and the Sister of Nationals MP Colin Boyce has also been caught up in the Middle East crisis.
The number of affected Australians dwarfs any consular operation the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has ever conducted. UAE and airlines are working hard to put flights on for travellers when safe to do so.
There were line-ups for hours and hours to try and get accommodation, line-ups for hours to get on a bus to accommodation.
From a personal note, I actually have a sister that was in Jordan going on, and she's now in Egypt and flying to Ankara in Turkey. She actually got out via a ferry along with another 2,000 people. That was quite a ordeal for her.
Hugh, the Albanese government has also confirmed that all Defence Force and consular personnel have been accounted for after an Iranian drone hit the Al Minhad airbase in the UAE. In other news, Israel's new ambassador to Australia has welcomed Anthony Albanese's statement of support for Operation Epic Fury.
It was a good statement. It was supportive. They took the right side of history in this aspect. There's no request for others to join. It's a campaign which is taken upon by the call of history.
Well, we support the US-led action here. I mean, at its core, this is about preventing Iran from ever being able to acquire a deployable nuclear weapon.
Canada's Prime Minister has touched down in Sydney today. Mark Carney will address federal parliament on Thursday. No doubt he will raise the Middle East conflict in that speech and in private conversations with Anthony Albanese. Hugh.
OK, Josh Martin in Canberra, thank you. We'll have more coverage in 7 News at 6, and Michael Usher is back with a 7 News special tonight with breaking developments live from the Middle East and expert analysis on the growing impact here in Australia. That is at 9:10 tonight here on 7. To news here in Sydney now, and police have opened fire, shooting a man dead in the eastern suburbs. Officers were called to a unit in Potts Point just before 11 this morning where 2 women were being attacked. Police used a taser that failed to stop the man, and when he threatened officers with a knife, he was shot.
One round was discharged by a police officer striking the male. The male was sometime later confirmed deceased at the scene by New South Wales ambulance and paramedics.
Both women have been taken to hospital in a stable condition. An independent review will look at the action of the police officers involved.